Good morning. It is a pleasure being here. And I think that I'm going to give you a little bit of the perspective of the people of Israel to what is going on in the tribunals of the European tribunals, including specifically the ICJ. Yesterday I talked in this room about how Iran has become not only a threat to Israel, but a threat to all of Europe, to the free world, to the West, when there is an axis of countries that divided the world into two blocks. One block is committed to democracy, to values of human rights, to freedom of religion and expression, and to peace, while the other bloc is exploiting the democratic institutions and mechanism in order to weaken democracies and expand their influence around the world. And today's speech, when I'm talking now about the ICJ, I think that we're at the same place. This builds on the same narrative, and it is a specific illustration of how it is possible to exploit and misuse tribunals and institutions that are aimed to protect human rights and democratic values, and to misuse it into doing the opposite, into weakening countries which are democracies, into undermining the right of countries such as Israel for self-defense, and to creating a support for terror and genocide. So let me do a zoom out, and before I use the illustration of the ICJ processes with regards to Israel, I want to put everything that is happening and pending in the ICJ in the Israeli perspective, and I feel it is, my moral duty to bring the voice of Israelis after October 7th. So what Israelis saw live on October 7th, which was a Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, that they saw Hamas attacking the state of Israel in an attempt to commit genocide. With the support of Iran and Hezbollah, they raped, killed, burned, and beheaded over 1,000 Israelis that they took from their homes. Women, children, infants, Jews and non-Jews, for the record. Also non-Jews were beheaded and murdered and kidnapped. We have also some Muslim hostages. It is not being talked about. The Hamas terrorists broadcasted the murder of their victims on Facebook, and days later they publicly vowed on international platforms that they would repeat October 7th attack again and again and again. And this is what I want you to see, this horrific part, right after October 7th. I don't know how many of you saw that, but this is something that needs to be aware of.
يجب أن ننتهي.
أن ينتهي وين؟
بس
بقطاع غزة؟
ينتهي إلى لا بتكلم عنه كل الأراضي الفلسطينية.
كل الأراضي الفلسطينية، يعني زوال إسرائيل؟
طبعا. وجود إسرائيل غير منطقي. وجود إسرائيل هو اللي بخلق كل هذه الآلام والعذابات والدموع والدماء. هي إسرائيل مش إحنا ضحية الاحتلال، نقطة وآخر السطر. لذلك ما حدا يلومنا، إحنا اللي بنعمله. في 7 أكتوبر، في 10 أكتوبر، في مليون أكتوبر، إحنا اللي بنعمل مبرر. It is just.
There are other interviews where they say, and it's out there and it's public, we will do October 7th again and again and again. And this is how we launched our self-defense war. And another thing that all Israelis are aware of, unfortunately, is that according to the polls, 70% of the Palestinians who live in Judea and Samaria support October 7th massacre again and again and again. And I want you all to remember all these assumptions before we go to the ICJ, because it is not the sterile procedure. We can't talk about what's happening over there without, understanding what is the world that we are living in when the process is taking place. And again, is 90% of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria deny the events of October 7. So this is the environment in which we are about to talk about the ICJ process. Now, Hamas, along with Iran and Hezbollah, and they are the indirect, sides who are initiating all of these processes, are dictators to their people. They suppress women's rights, they execute women who refuse to wear hijab or act not according to the Islam. They are systematically erasing freedom of expression, human rights, killing journalists, and freedom of expression wherever they reach. They ruin the markets and the economy. They all established armed militants who are killing and torturing citizens in multiple countries. And they are financing terrorism on the soil of Europe. And if, by any chance you are a member of the LGBT community and you will be coming over to live in Gaza, you will be executed. So this is the perspective of the proceedings, and I insist on putting, the frame of the bigger picture before we start touching on what's happening in ICJ and what's happening in those tribunals in Europe. And when Israelis look at the two processes that are pending in the ICJ, one is the claim that Israel is performing genocide after October 7th in its just war in order to bring safety back to our borders. And when they see the other process, the pending process of a request for an opinion of should we withdraw of Judea and Samaria, should we withdraw of East Jerusalem, as if it is a sterile question, not involving terror organizations and entities which are everything but democracies, everything but, worried about human lives. They watch and they are in disbelief. And you have to understand that Israelis are in disbelief of what's happening over there, because while Israelis are committed to following international rules of war, we are in an asymmetric war. Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran are bluntly violating all of that. September, October started with the breach of a ceasefire. While Israel evacuates Palestinian civilians from Gaza, yes, it's not nice. Yes, the people there are suffering, but we're trying to do our best to apply and to follow international rules of law. Hamas uses their civilians, including children, as human shields. How come there isn't even one bomb shelter in the whole of Gaza? They have a whole tunnel system underground, big as the size of Manhattan subway, but they don't have $1 to build a shelter or to take their people underground in order to support them. On the contrary, they are, Hamas and Iran, only lately, recently, and currently, are targeting and sending numerous missiles towards civilians in Israel. While Israel uses hospitals and schools to advance society and benefit its citizens, Hamas kills people within hospitals, like they murdered one of the hostages in Shifa Hospital, and uses them as warehouses for weapons and terror. While Israel educates its children for peace and hoping for a peaceful future, Hamas, Iran, and Hezbollah and similar groups promote education towards genocide and Nazism. Do you know that Israeli soldiers, when they went into Gaza, they found pink iPads of girls with the screensavers of Hitler and the Mein Kampf books? This is their education, and this is the system of education over there. While Israel gives access to those who request to examine the prison condition of the Nukhba terrorists, the people who raped and murdered the Israeli citizens on October 7th, Israel responded positively to the request of the international institutions to come and see how they are being held and under what conditions. While this happened, we still have over 120 hostages that are denied medical attention and access to the Red Cross. Hamas even refuses to let us know who are the people they have captured, who is alive, who is injured, and who is killed. So this is an asymmetric war. And I'm asking you, and now I'm going to ask you, how does the processes at the ICJ promote a peaceful solution and, a remedy to the people of Israel who are suffering from continuous attempts for genocide against international law? Let me remind you that the State of Israel was established according to a UN resolution. So let us now illustrate the absurd in the mechanism of the ICJ, as a sparkling illustration of how forces that are against any democratic values exploit the weaknesses of the democratic institution and mechanism in order to expand their acts of terror and influence around the world. And let's start then talk about the charges of genocide that is now pending in the ICJ, and of course the advisory opinion concerning Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria. And I want to give you my perspective of how I see it. The previous speaker, attorney Tucker, I think was your... Turner, sorry. You touched on all the blind spots of this tribunal, but I want to make it a little bit more blunt and a little bit more critical, okay? Let's put it on the table. The mechanism of advisory opinion has become a backdoor mechanism that forces countries that are not interested in putting one of the most complicated conflicts around the world to align with the interest of terrorist organizations. I mean, what happened to the fundamental principle of law that is called consent? Why is Israel being dragged there without its consent? And when the entity that can drag any state for that matter doesn't even have to be a UN member, state member. One. Second, this is the issue of the standing. It is too wide the ability to access and use the advisory opinion tool. Like it was said before, the opinion is issued without examining the truth, without any factual checking. I mean, the opinion of questions of settlements and the conflict and the question of Judea, Samaria, and East Jerusalem, this involves complex and disputed factual issues which are ill-suited to determination by an advisory opinion. So they issue this advisory opinion without checking the facts. When you go to courts for a $200 debt, the judge needs to investigate the truth. Here they can issue an advisory opinion without checking the facts. Absurd. 4 point, genocide. The term of genocide has become an empty phrase and is now being used as a tool to try to weaken countries that are protecting themselves from genocide. Israel is now dealing with issues of laws of war. That is not a genocide, and they are marginalizing the important, word genocide. 5 point, why isn't the European tribunals protect themselves against sham litigation. The process in the European Tribunal is sham litigation. You know what is sham litigation? When people that do not come in good faith, or they have their own breaches of law and problems, and they come and they initiate legal procedures in order to exhaust the other side when they do not come in good faith. So I think, had I been a judge at the ICJ, I would say, this is something, I'm not going to give a hand to this kind of sham attempt, to not help a country that has done nothing against international law before October 7th that would justify this legally, and that is facing terror states and terror organization. Okay. So, sixth point, the court would write this advisory opinion about, okay, Israel should stop the war in Gaza right now in 5 minutes. Or another advisory opinion, Israel should withdraw within 2 weeks from East Jerusalem, from Judea and Samaria, and in other places. Just take into consideration what are the consequences of such an, disconnected, out in the space, advisory opinion. This is not a legal issue. This is something that has to do with heavy political and security issues. I just showed you the YouTube, the interview that they would say we would do October 7th again. I just told you that over 70% of Palestinians support Hamas and would do October 7th again. So what happened to another legal right of self-defense? How do the judges at the ICJ would consider the consequences of this unbalanced ruling? Are they the one who would be inflicted by the consequences of their ruling? And I have another question for you. What kind of incentives and messages does that kind of ruling send to the world, to terror organizations, to Iran? It's like they felt they should write a patent on it. We can be terrorists, we can kill civilians, and we can not only get away with it, we can even use the democratic mechanism which we are trying to destroy to assist us in this battle. Why should we negotiate a peace process? Why should we support moderate Palestinian people who want peace and quiet if we can go to the European institution and just, be a terrorist and enjoy the fruits of that? I think it is unreasonable and it is unbalanced. And I cannot avoid putting on the table another point, which is the institution and the mechanism of appointment of the judges. You have to understand that everything that I said so far is going to decrease and to ruin the legitimacy of ICJ as a just and appropriate tribunal. And I think that it cannot stay this way. And I want to touch on the mechanism of appointing the judges. How can it be that such a sensitive tribunal is being appointed in a political process? That the judges in the ICJ are appointed by the Assembly of the United Nations, subject to the approval of the Security Council members. The Security Council members is consisted of other countries like China, like Russia. They're the one appointing or approving this tribunal, this political tribunal, who is now going to check the legal standing of what Israel is doing on behalf of terror groups that oppose any democratic values. I heard also that Iran has already caused the ICJ to deal with Canada and Britain and the United States, and I apologize if I sound a bit populist, but I think there is a problem here. And I think we have a problem. I know that the advisory opinion is not binding legally, but let me tell you something. Nobody knows that. The public doesn't know that. Just like they are not aware of the fact that the ICJ did not issue an order that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. The people do not understand that there is no such decree or ruling, because we are living in this world of everything is so inaccurate. So I need to finish. So I will finish with my 2 cents on what should be changed with regards to this tribunal. They say, you know, that bad cases make bad laws. I think that the ICJ is in such a situation. What I would suggest is for countries that are democracies should collaborate together and create a coalition that would rethink the structure of these tribunals and their scope of authority. I think that there should be new rules about dragging states to processes of advisory opinion and to rethink and to define what means a consent. A country must consent to be being dealt there. We need to narrow the standing of other entities. We do not have the moral right to launch these processes. I think that issues which are involving factual, complex investigations and truth, factual, examination should not be under the scope of such an advisory opinion. I would create a special doctrine of sham litigation that would bind the court not to address initiatives or requests that are not in good faith. I would rethink the system of appointing the judges, and I would put special emphasis on security considerations and the consequences of their ruling. Thank you very much.